The first time I suspected Marissa wasn't lying to me, but editing me, it wasn't because of lipstick on a collar or a late-night text she forgot to delete. It was because she started speaking in summaries. We'd been married 6 years, together for 10. We lived in a neat, stubbornly average neighborhood outside Raleigh, where every driveway had a basketball hoop and every mailbox looked like it had been approved by a committee. Our house was a two-story with beige siding, a porch light that flickered when it rained, and an azalea bush Marissa kept alive through sheer willpower. I worked in operations for a medical supply company, the kind of job where you spend your day preventing emergencies that other people never know almost happen. Marissa was a senior account manager for a software firm downtown, charismatic in the way that made strangers tell her their life stories in checkout lines. She was the sort of person who could make a waitress feel like the only person in the room. She was also, I learned, the sort of person who could make a husband feel like he'd imagined his own marriage. It started small. Her stories used to have edges. When she talked about her day, there were details. The intern who called the copier, the printer box, the client who wore cologne like it was armor, the way the elevator always smelled faintly like burnt coffee. Then around early October, she started saying things like, "It was fine," and "same stuff," and "you know how it is." She began skipping the parts that made her day feel real, like she was removing the fingerprints from her life. I told myself she was stressed. Her company was restructuring. She'd been on calls late into the evening, headset on, voice soft and professional, pacing the kitchen as if the tile was a track. She started going in earlier, coming home later. She'd always been ambitious, but this was different. It wasn't the hours that bothered me. It was the way she was absent even when she was sitting across from me. One night we were in bed, the room lit by the bluish glow of her phone. I was half asleep when I felt the mattress dip as she shifted. She angled the screen away from me. It wasn't dramatic. It was casual, practiced, the kind of movement people don't realize they've turned into muscle memory. "Who's texting at midnight?" I mumbled, mostly teasing. "Work," she said instantly, like a reflex. "Your work texts you at midnight?" "It's not midnight," she said, glancing at the screen. "It's, okay, it is, but it's the West Coast team." We didn't have a West Coast team. Her company had a satellite office in Denver, which she'd complained about for years because of the time difference. But Denver didn't require midnight messages. I didn't correct her. I didn't want to be the guy who fact-checks his wife's excuses like he's cross-examining a witness. So I turned over and let sleep take me. The next morning, in the brightness of the kitchen, with the smell of coffee and toast and the news murmuring from the TV, the lie from the night before felt less like a lie and more like a misunderstanding. Or maybe I was the one misunderstanding. That was the first stage. I didn't realize it at the time, but there are stages to learning someone is betraying you, and the earliest one is when you keep trying to make the evidence fit the person you married. We didn't have kids. We talked about it for years in the abstract way people do when they're afraid of making the decision real. Next year, we'd say, after this promotion, after the market calms down, after we travel a little. It was always after. Somewhere along the line, after started feeling like a place we'd never reach. Still, we had routines. We had Saturday mornings where she'd blast music and open windows while I pretended to hate it. We had a favorite taco place. We had a dog, a golden retriever named Benny, who believed every person was his friend and every day was his birthday. We had a life that looked solid from the outside, and I clung to that like a man clinging to a railing in wind. Then came the conference. Marissa told me in late October that she had a 2-day client conference in Charlotte. She said it like it was a nuisance, like she was already tired of the hotel ballroom and the lanyard. She showed me an email on her phone, quick and casual, as if to preempt questions. I saw the subject line and the company logo and the word Charlotte. I didn't read the details. I didn't think I needed to. Who reads their spouse's emails? The night before she left, she packed in the bedroom while I watched a game in the living room. I heard drawers opening and closing, hangers sliding. Benny followed her around like a shadow. When she came out with her suitcase, she was wearing one of her sharper outfits, black blazer, fitted jeans, boots that clicked. She looked like the version of herself she used to be when we first started dating, when she'd meet me after work and we'd go somewhere crowded and loud just to feel like part of the city. For a second, seeing her like that made me feel relieved. Maybe this was just her waking back up. Maybe she'd been bored and stressed, and now she had something to focus on. "You look nice," and I said. "It's just a conference," she replied, but her mouth lifted slightly, pleased. Still, she hesitated in the doorway, as if debating whether to say something. Then she walked over, leaned down, kissed me. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a full kiss, warm and familiar. Her hand rested on my shoulder for a moment, squeezing. I remember thinking stupidly that things might be okay. "Don't stay up too late," she said. "I won't. Drive safe." "I will." She glanced at her phone. "I should go. I'm meeting Kara for coffee on the way." Kara was a coworker I'd met twice, a bright, intense woman who talked at me about productivity apps while I nodded. "Tell her I said hey." "I will," Marissa said. And then she was gone, suitcase wheels rattling down the front steps. The house felt too quiet. Benny sat by the window for a while, ears perked, waiting for the sound of her car to come back. When it didn't, he sighed like he was personally offended and flopped onto his bed. That night, I ate leftover pasta and watched the game and answered a few work emails. Around 10, I texted Marissa, "Drive okay?" She responded 5 minutes later. "Yep. Hotel is fine. Exhausted. Love you." I typed back, "Love you too." Sleep. That should have been it. Normal. But something in the way she wrote it felt off, like the words had been dropped into place by a machine. It wasn't that she didn't say, "Love you." She always said it. It was that she didn't add anything else. No complaint about traffic. No joke about the hotel. No comment about Kara. Just the facts, delivered clean. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then put my phone down and went to bed. The next morning I woke up early and took Benny for a walk. The air was crisp, leaves skittering across the sidewalk. Neighbors waved. Everything looked normal. I kept checking my phone like a teenager. No new messages. At noon I texted again. "How's it going?" No response. At 3 I tried to call. It rang twice and went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't want to sound needy. I told myself she was in a session. I told myself she'd call later. At 6 I heated up soup. At 7 I started a movie and couldn't focus. At 8 my phone buzzed. I snatched it up like it was oxygen. "Marissa, sorry, back-to-back meetings. Long day. Might be late tonight. Dinner with clients." I replied, "No worries. Have fun. Call me when you can." She sent a thumbs-up emoji. Marissa never used the thumbs-up emoji with me. She used it with coworkers, with group chats, with people she didn't know her actual tone to. I sat there, phone in my hand, feeling ridiculous for being bothered by an emoji. This was how it begins, I would later realize. You start collecting tiny things you can't explain, like pebbles in your pocket, until one day you look down and realize you've been carrying a weight. That night, I went to bed at 11. I woke up around 2 to Benny barking softly at the front window. Not his playful bark, his suspicious bark, the one he used when someone walked too close to the house. I stumbled downstairs, half asleep, heart thumping, and looked out. Nothing. Just darkness and the glow of a street lamp. Benny kept barking, tail stiff. "What is it?" I whispered, trying not to wake the neighbors, even though my brain was suddenly convinced we were about to be robbed. Then I heard it, my phone buzzing upstairs. I raced up, grabbed it off the nightstand. It was a call from Marissa. Relief washed through me so fast it made me dizzy. She was calling. She was alive. She was probably drunk with clients and wanted to tell me something. I answered, whispering, "Hey, you okay?" There was a pause on the line, a breath. Then a man's voice said, calm and unfamiliar, "She can't talk right now." For a second, my brain refused to process it. I waited for Marissa's laugh in the background, for her to grab the phone and say, "Babe, sorry, it's loud," some normal explanation. Instead, there was muffled music and the low rumble of voices like a bar. The man sounded amused, not panicked, not embarrassed, like he was exactly where he wanted to be. My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" Another pause, then, "She'll call you back." The line went dead. I stared at the phone like it had turned into something poisonous. My hands were shaking, not violently, but with a tremor that made the device feel slippery. I called back immediately, straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. My chest felt tight. My thoughts were loud, crashing over each other. Maybe she was with coworkers and someone answered as a joke. Maybe she dropped her phone and someone picked it up. Maybe she was in danger and this was a kidnapping. The mind will offer you any explanation that allows you to keep loving the person you love. I sat on the edge of the bed and forced myself to breathe. In, out, in, out. Then I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I opened our shared location app. We'd set it up years earlier, mostly for safety. We both traveled occasionally. It made sense. There was always an unspoken agreement. This isn't to spy, it's to protect. And I had never checked it obsessively. I checked once or twice if she was running late, just to see if she was stuck in traffic. That was it. Her location dot appeared. It wasn't in Charlotte, it was in Raleigh. Not just in Raleigh. It was 10 minutes from our house, in a cluster of buildings near downtown I recognized because I'd driven past it 100 times. A strip of restaurants, a boutique hotel, a rooftop bar. I stared at the map until my eyes blurred. My mind tried to insist it was a glitch. The app was wrong. GPS drift. Her phone had been left in Raleigh with someone else while she was in Charlotte. That sounded insane, but it also sounded more tolerable than the alternative. I got dressed in the dark like a man preparing for a fire. Jeans, hoodie, shoes. I grabbed my keys. Benny watched me with bright, confused eyes, tail thumping uncertainly. "What are you doing?" I whispered, and he wagged like he had no idea but was excited to be included. I didn't bring him. I didn't want a dog in the car if I ended up driving to Charlotte. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't sit in that bed with that voice in my ear. The night air hit me like a slap. I drove with the map open on the dashboard, watching her dot like it was a heartbeat monitor. It didn't move much. It stayed in the same spot, hovering over the boutique hotel. I parked down the street far enough away that my car wouldn't be obvious, but close enough that I could see the entrance. The lobby lights were bright. A valet stand sat empty. It was late, but the city still had a pulse. People stumbled by laughing. A couple argued softly near a rideshare pickup. I sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, and tried to plan what I would do if I saw her. March into the hotel and demand her? Call her name like a man in a bad movie? The reality was I had no idea how to confront the person I trusted most. My phone buzzed. A text. "Marissa. Sorry, I fell asleep. Everything okay?" I stared at the message until my eyes burned. Fell asleep. At 2 in the morning, after a man answered her phone, while her location sat at a hotel 10 minutes from our house. I typed slowly, forcing my fingers to be steady. "You called me," a guy answered. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Marissa." "What?" "No, I didn't call you. I've been asleep." I felt something in me crack, small but sharp. It wasn't the cheating, not yet. It was the immediate denial, the gaslighting delivered so smoothly it might as well have been pre-written. I wrote, "I'm not making it up. It happened." No response. I watched the hotel entrance. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. Minutes dragged. Then I saw her. She came out of the lobby wearing her black blazer, hair down, laughing at something someone beside her said. A man walked with her, taller than me, broad shoulders, dark hair. He had his hand on the small of her back as if it belonged there. Not a dramatic grab, just a casual, intimate placement, like it had happened many times before, like she didn't flinch. They stopped under the awning. He leaned in and kissed her, not a quick kiss, a slow kiss, the kind you give when you don't have to hide. My vision tunneled. I couldn't hear the city anymore, only the rush of blood in my skull. I watched them separate, still close, foreheads almost touching. She said something, smiling. He laughed. Then she glanced down at her phone, the same phone that had just insisted she hadn't called me. He looked at the screen too, curious, like she was showing him a funny meme. She typed something with her thumbs, probably the "fell asleep" lie. I sat frozen. Part of me wanted to slam the car door and walk over, to break the scene like a glass. Another part of me felt strangely detached, as if I was watching a stranger's life. They went back inside together. I stayed in the car for a long time after that, hands trembling in my lap, eyes staring at the hotel doors like they might spit out an explanation. At some point, the shock turned into something colder. Not rage yet. Rage is hot and messy. What I felt was a quiet, precise awareness. The marriage I thought I had was not the marriage I was in. And whatever was happening, it was not new. People don't move like that the first time they betray you. They don't look that comfortable. They don't lie that easily. I drove home before dawn, headlights cutting through fog that hovered low over the road like breath. The house looked the same as always when I pulled into the driveway. The porch light flickered. The azalea bush sat stubbornly in the dark. Benny greeted me with frantic joy, spinning in circles, as if my whole absence had been a tragedy. I went to the kitchen, poured coffee I didn't want, and sat at the table staring at the wood grain. My hands had stopped shaking. My mind felt eerily clear. If I confronted her immediately, she'd lie. I already knew that. She'd deny, deflect, accuse me of paranoia. She'd cry. She'd say I was overreacting. She might even be convincing. She was good at persuasion. She did it for a living. If I demanded the truth, she'd give me a version that made her look reasonable. It's been hard lately. You've been distant. I didn't mean for it to happen. She'd frame it like an unfortunate event that happened to her, not a series of choices she made. And if I left right then, I would be leaving blind. I would be walking away with my heart torn out and my hands empty while she controlled the story. She would tell people whatever she wanted. She would rewrite our marriage as a failure I caused. She would walk into the next chapter clean while I bled. I had never been the kind of man who plotted revenge. I believed in directness, in talking things out, in being decent even when it hurt. But sitting there in the dim kitchen, I realized decency without awareness is just surrender. So I decided on something that surprised even me. I decided to learn the whole truth before I let her know I knew anything. Marissa came home around 9 the next morning, wearing sunglasses though it was cloudy. She walked in quietly, as if trying not to wake me. But Benny's joyous barking announced her anyway. She crouched to pet him, smiling, and for a moment she looked so normal it made me want to scream. "Hey," she said, standing up. "Sorry, the conference dinner went late. I crashed." I forced my face to stay neutral. "No worries. Long night?" "Yeah," she sighed, toeing off her shoes. "I'm exhausted." She walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and frowned. "We're out of creamer." "We can grab some later," I said. She leaned against the counter, rubbing her temple like she had a headache. "Are you okay? You texted me kind of weird." Here it was, the pivot, the subtle attempt to make me the problem. "I woke up when you called," I said calmly. She blinked. "I didn't call." I held her gaze. "My phone rang. It was your number." Her mouth tightened slightly, just for a fraction of a second. Then she shook her head like I was mistaken. "That's impossible. Maybe your phone glitched, or maybe you dreamed it." I nodded slowly, as if considering it. "Maybe." Relief flickered across her face, quick and bright. She believed it. She believed she'd contained it. She reached out, touched my arm. "I'm sorry if I worried you." "It's fine," I said. "Probably just my brain." She kissed my cheek and walked upstairs to shower. I listened to the water run, the familiar sound now warped by what I'd seen. Benny followed her up, tail wagging, loyal as ever. I stayed in the kitchen and stared at the empty creamer spot in the fridge like it was a metaphor I didn't want. That day, I went to work like nothing had happened. I answered emails. I joined meetings. I smiled at coworkers. My body moved through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the image of her under the hotel awning, the man's hand on her back. I kept hearing his voice. "She can't talk right now." I didn't cry. Not yet. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the center of me and left the shell standing. On my lunch break, I sat in my car and did something else I'd never done. I opened our bank app and scrolled. We shared most accounts: mortgage, utilities, groceries. Marissa had her own credit card for work expenses, but we paid it off together. I wasn't looking for dirt. I was looking for proof that I hadn't lost my mind. There were charges I recognized. Gas, lunch spots, target runs. Then buried among them, a charge from the boutique hotel. Not from last night, from 2 weeks earlier, and another from a month before that. I stared at the dates. My hands tightened around the phone. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a drunk night after a conference dinner. This was a pattern. I took screenshots and saved them to a hidden folder on my phone, one I created with a name that looked like a boring work file. Inventory Q4. I hated myself for being sneaky, but I hated being fooled more. That evening, Marissa acted affectionate. She made dinner. She asked about my day. She laughed at something Benny did. She leaned into me on the couch and rested her head on my shoulder like she'd done 1,000 times. Her hair smelled like shampoo and something floral. My body responded automatically, an old reflex of comfort. I held her, and at the same time I felt like I was holding a stranger. "I missed you," she said softly. I swallowed. "Missed you too." The lie tasted metallic. Over the next week I became two people. Outwardly, I was the same husband I'd always been. I made coffee, I walked the dog. I listened to her talk about work. I nodded and smiled and asked questions. Inwardly, I became an investigator. I didn't follow her everywhere. I didn't want to become a man consumed by suspicion, but I watched patterns. I paid attention to the details she used to share freely, but now delivered in summaries. She started taking calls in the garage. She said it was because the house was noisy. Benny apparently was distracting. Our quiet suburban home was suddenly too chaotic for her to talk in. She began wearing perfume more often, a heavier scent she'd never used before. When I asked lightly, "New perfume?" she smiled and said, "It was a sample from work." She didn't meet my eyes. She began going to the gym after work. This was new. Marissa hated the gym. She'd always said she preferred walking, yoga, anything that didn't involve fluorescent lighting and strangers sweating. Now she had gym clothes in the laundry every other day. When I offered to go with her sometime, she laughed like it was absurd. "It's my me time," she said. "You wouldn't like it." Maybe she was right. Maybe I wouldn't like watching my wife become someone else. I didn't want to hack her phone or plant cameras or do anything illegal or insane. I wanted truth, not a crime spree. But I did the things any person can do when they stop trusting. I listened. I observed. I documented what was already visible. One Thursday, she told me she had a work happy hour downtown. "Just a couple hours," she said. "Team bonding." "Have fun," I said. She left at 6. At 7, I checked the location app. Her dot was at a restaurant I knew, a trendy place with string lights. At 8, it moved. Not toward home, toward the boutique hotel again. My chest tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I didn't drive there this time. I didn't want to be the man in the car watching his wife kiss someone else. Once was enough to tattoo it into my brain. Instead, I took a screenshot of the location, time-stamped, then another 30 minutes later, then another. At 9:30, her dot left the hotel and moved toward home. She walked in at 10, cheeks slightly flushed, hair a little messy in a way that could be innocent or not. She smiled at me as if nothing was wrong. "Hey," she said, hanging her coat. "How was your night?" "Fine," I said. "How was happy hour?" "Good," she said too quickly. "Loud, you know." She kissed me. I let her. Her lips were warm. I wondered if he'd kissed her too. I wondered if she could taste the difference between the two lives she was living. That night after she fell asleep, I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling and realized something that made my stomach turn. I could confront her with everything I'd collected, and she might still deny it. She would call me controlling. She would say the location was wrong. She would say the hotel was where the happy hour group went afterward. She would find a way to make reality pliable. So I needed something she couldn't bend. I needed a name. I didn't know who he was. That was the one thing. I had seen him, heard his voice, but he was faceless in my life beyond that. If I knew who he was, I could understand the shape of this betrayal. I could see if he was married too, if he worked with her, if he was a client, if he was someone she met on purpose. And if I wanted revenge, real revenge, it wouldn't be screaming. It wouldn't be violence. It would be taking away the things she valued most. Control of the narrative. Marissa loved appearances. Not in a shallow way, not like she was obsessed with Instagram, but in the way that she needed to be perceived as competent, composed, admired. She curated herself like a brand. Even in our marriage, she did it. If we fought, she always wanted to resolve it quickly. Not because conflict is bad, but because unresolved conflict made the relationship look messy, even if no one else could see it. If she was cheating, she was doing it in a way that still allowed her to look like a good wife. That meant she believed she could contain it, manage it, keep the image intact. My revenge, I realized, would be letting her image collapse under the weight of the truth she thought she could control. But first I needed proof she couldn't talk her way out of. So I waited. I acted normal. I laughed at her jokes. I told her she looked nice when she dressed up. I held her hand at the grocery store. It felt disgusting sometimes, like I was complicit in my own deception. But it also felt strategic. I needed her to stay comfortable. I needed her to keep underestimating me. And then, one Sunday afternoon in November, the opportunity came. We were at a neighbor's barbecue. The weather was weirdly warm, one of those late fall days where the sun tricks you into forgetting winter is coming. People stood around with paper plates, talking about football and home repairs. Marissa was in her element, laughing, telling stories, charming everyone. She had her hand on my arm, a public display of affection that felt almost performative. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom. As I passed the kitchen, I saw Marissa's phone on the counter, screen lit, a notification banner sliding across. A name flashed at the top, Graham. My heart stopped. The message preview was short, but it was enough. Can't stop thinking about last night. My body went cold. I stood there staring, and for a second I felt like I might vomit into the neighbor's sink. Then the banner disappeared, screen dimming. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't pick it up. I didn't do anything that would tip her off. I just memorized the name like it was a weapon. Graham. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet lid, breathing through my nose like I was trying to survive a panic attack. My hands were shaking again. My eyes stung. Not from tears yet, but from pressure building behind them. Graham. A first name. Not a coworker name I recognized. Not Kara. Not a client she'd mentioned. A man whose voice I'd heard, whose hand I'd seen on her back. When I walked back outside, Marissa glanced at me with a bright smile. "You okay?" she asked, casual. "Yeah," I said. "Just needed a minute." She nodded and went back to her conversation, laughing at something someone said, completely at ease. That night, after we got home and she fell asleep, I opened my laptop and typed Graham Marissa into every combination I could think of. Social media, LinkedIn, public records. I didn't know his last name. Raleigh is big. A first name is a needle in a haystack. Then I remembered something else. The boutique hotel. I searched the hotel's tag photos on Instagram. It was a long shot, but the place was trendy. People posted everything. I scrolled through images of cocktails, skyline views, couples smiling under string lights. My stomach churned with each swipe. And then I saw him. He was in the background of a photo someone posted 2 weeks ago, leaning against the bar laughing. Dark hair, broad shoulders, the same shape. The caption mentioned a live jazz night. In the comments, someone tagged him. A Graham Weller. My fingers went numb. I clicked the profile. Private account. Of course, but his bio was visible. Graham Weller, Raleigh, real estate. And beneath that, a small line. Husband to Claire. Husband. I stared at the word until it blurred. Husband to Claire. He wasn't just some single guy hooking up with my wife. He had a wife too. He had a life he was betraying. And in that moment, something in me shifted from shock to clarity so sharp it hurt. This wasn't just about Marissa choosing someone else. This was about two people deciding that their spouses were collateral damage. My revenge, I realized, didn't have to be messy. It could be precise. It could be truth delivered at the right time to the right people, like a dropped match in a room full of fumes. But I wasn't going to rush it. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to build it slowly, the way Marissa had built her deception, over time, with confidence, assuming no one would look too closely. Because here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It teaches you your partner has been studying you. They know what you'll forgive, what you'll overlook, what you'll rationalize. They shape their lies around your kindness. I was done being predictable. The next morning, Marissa kissed me goodbye like always. Benny wagged. The porch light flickered. The world kept spinning, and I smiled back at her, steady and calm, while my mind quietly began planning the day her carefully curated life would finally meet the truth.